Would you do a video of their current planned future reactor mix, load response exacerbated by so-called renewables? Sure, the current planned future is that around the world, the International Panel on Climate Change recommended that we triple our nuclear. And that's just to give us the base load to supplant the fossil fuels that we'll be divorcing ourselves from. Now, if we wanted to use all of our energy on nuclear in the United States, we'd need to have about 5 times as many nuclear power plants as we have now to get all of our electricity from nuclear. Now, if we're going to be basically putting solar and wind wherever we can to get as much as we can, then you need some kind of base load to supply when the sun's not shining and the wind's not blowing. And right now, usually that's natural gas. Now, natural gas, it is a fossil fuel. It does make carbon dioxide, and so you're not replacing all of the carbon emitting fuels if you use solar and wind unless you supply those with nuclear. If you just get solar and wind and get the cheapest baseload energy to supply the added energy needed, then you're still using a large amount of that fossil fuel greenhouse gas emitting energy. It's basically going to give you about the same amount of greenhouse gases per kilowatt hour as coal and oil if you're using natural gas. So you're not really solving the greenhouse gas problem if you're using solar and wind without nuclear. So pretty much, if you want to get to that mix that most of the politicians are looking for, as much solar and wind as possible, then the rest of that needs to be nuclear. And so you're talking about still having around 3 times the amount of nuclear that we have now, which means we need to start building like gangbusters. I will say, though, that I used to think solar and wind were environmentally friendly. I don't anymore. And that's because they require so much material, so much mining and milling and smelting and manufacturing, and so much waste. It's just a huge footprint just for the manufacture part, just to build them. It takes an enormous amount of materials for a tiny amount of energy. And that has a huge environmental impact. Whereas with nuclear, it's the smallest amount of materials per kilowatt hour that you get out of nuclear. And then it's got the smallest footprint when deployed. So some people like to say, well, you only have to cover France with solar panels to power the world. Well, other people would point out you don't even have to cover Hawaii with nuclear power plants to power the world. Would you rather cover part of Hawaii or all of France? And that's just for deployment. That's not talking about the mining and the milling and the smelting, the transportation, the waste, and so forth. So really, the only thing that really makes sense anymore to me as a nuclear engineering professor, so I am biased, I am an expert on radiation safety, radiation risk. I'm a certified health physicist, I teach health physics, I do research in it. The only thing that makes sense is to go all nuclear.